Christina Valenzuela is the owner and creative director of Pearl Thistle, where she offers a unique blend of theology and science to bring better lifelong body literacy to Catholics. She's the author of a new book released this spring by our Sunday visitor entitled The Language of Your Body, Embracing God's Design for Your Cycle. Christina has been a certified instructor in the Boston Crosscheck method of natural family planning since 2013 and has provided menstrual cycle, fertility, and NFP programming for dioceses, campus ministries, and parishes all around the country. She holds an undergraduate degree in philosophy and theology from the University of Notre Dame, where she earned the Gertrude Austin Marty Award for outstanding service to church and community in combination with academic excellence. She received a master's in theological studies from Harvard Divinity School and lives with her husband and their 4 children outside of Boston. Please help us welcome Christina to the podcast.
Welcome to the NFP Podcast, where we explore the empowering world of natural family planning. I'm Amy Smith. Join me and my co-host Emily Appledorn each week. Together, we're here to dive deep into the science, the stories, and the spirituality behind NFP. Every week, we push back against the free love culture and advocate for a culture of responsible love, where intentionality and respect are at the forefront of family planning. Join us as we discuss everything from the practicalities of charting and fertility awareness to the profound impact NFP can have on relationships and communities. Whether you're new to NFP or a seasoned pro, our podcast is your go-to resource for honest conversations, expert insights, and real-life experiences. So grab a friend, settle in, and get ready to be inspired. This is the NFP Podcast.
Welcome back to the podcast, everybody.
Hi, everybody.
Today, Emily and I are beyond excited to welcome Christina Valenzuela to the podcast. Welcome, Christina.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. We are
thanks so much
excited.
for being on. I know. We're so excited because Christina runs, operates, started, created, is just amazing. I'm just kind of fangirling a little, and I don't even know you, and I just met you and just kind of became exposed to your resources. But she has created this amazing world of resource for parents, for young girls, for older single women, for married couples, for parishes, for dioceses. I mean, there is just, no matter what category you fall into as a listener to this podcast, which we have people from all of those categories, you will find something that is helpful on this website. So she's the creator of Pearl Thistle. Christina, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, and how you kind of came into this world of NFP, because everyone's journey is a little bit unique.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. Everybody always asks me, how did you know that you wanted to become the Catholic period lady? And I was like, no, I did not know that. I still don't think I know that. It was a long, kind of slow process of just saying yes to things that felt like they were being asked of me. And so when I was first married, my husband and I had learned natural family planning. We did kind of a self-taught thing. We decided to get pregnant right away, had our first baby, and then I had no idea what to do. Postpartum nursing, I had nothing. I had nothing going on, and it was a little bit of a stressful time, and we had just moved to the Boston area. We were students at the time, grad students, and I just could not figure out the NFP landscape. This was, I think, right before we would have seen a big explosion in Facebook support groups and things like that. It really was just, who can you find locally was the sort of milieu I was working in there. Just couldn't find anybody. And so after my second baby was born, I did find an instructor. I found a local method called the Boston Crosscheck method, which is now no longer a local method. So that's a whole story in and of itself. But my instructor at the time, she said, she were working together for a while, and she said, Christina, we're running an instructor training, and I think you'd be good at it. Would you be interested in joining? And I thought to myself, if I, who was really motivated to learn an NFP method and tried so hard and couldn't find somebody, if I had trouble finding support, maybe there's other people out there who are also having trouble finding support, and maybe we just need more teachers. So, okay, I'm going to do it. And that is really what kind of started the whole big snowball. I did that work very, very quietly in the background as I worked for the church for many years. And then when I decided to step away from ministry work officially and kind of step into the NFP space more full time, that's when things really started changing. That's when people started asking me, hey, do you know what we have for our girls? Because I know NFP, but I only know how to talk about the cycle in the context of like biomarkers and fertility. How could we do this for our 10-year-old girls? And then the question was, well, could I teach my teenager how to chart, but like not for fertility, but just for health? What would be involved in that? And then, I have a college age girl and she's really interested about this for her roommates. They want to learn more together. And it just kind of went from there. All the while in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, wow, there's really a lot of space wide open in this area. Not that there's not a lot of wonderful people doing wonderful things, but just that we can be hard to find, we can be siloed. It's a matter of access, what you've heard of, what you trust. I think this is an area where word of mouth and having a personal relationship with your providers and with the programs is really, really important all across the board, but maybe especially for parents. It is such a very sensitive area in that regard.
Yeah, the harvest is abundant and the laborers are few has never been more true for this area of work. So you came to this because you're Catholic yourself. And so you kind of knew church teaching before you got married. You and your husband were on board and learned NFP. So but prior to that, were you knowledgeable about your cycle, about your body, about how it was going to work complementary to your spouse? Did you just
Oh,
come into this
absolutely no.
information?
Mm-mm,
Okay. So
no.
just during your engagement time was kind of when you came into this information.
So it's interesting because I learned about natural family planning when I was working in a pregnancy resource center while I was in college. So I had been born and raised Catholic, and I vaguely knew the church teaching. I didn't say I can't say I really understood it because in my mind it was limited to like, oh, just don't take contraception, but I didn't really have a strong why for that. And so then when I learned about it, when I actually saw Humanae Vitae for the first time, I thought, whoa, where has this been? Um, that's when I started thinking about, oh, maybe I should learn a little bit more about this. But I really did not invest in like charting my own cycle or learning much about my cycle until the proximate like engagement period, which in retrospect, gosh, if I would have had much more information as a teen, like I had really, really bad periods, really complicated. I don't want to say cycles. Cycles were pretty straightforward, but the actual periods themselves really awful as a teen. And I feel like I could have used a little bit more support and kind of much more vocabulary and understanding of my body to be able to talk to the doctors about what was actually going on.
That's so interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sorry you struggled with pain. Yeah, I know there are lots of girls who experience that, especially during the adolescent years. Okay, so you kind of I feel like the Lord just kind of keeps knocking, right? Presenting opportunities.
That's
Hey,
a good
what
way
about,
to put it.
yeah, what about this? What about this? And what about this? And um, it sounds like you just generously kind of kept responding and saying, well, yeah, what is there for this demographic? And what is there for this demographic? So where did you start? How did you start Pearl and Thistle? How did that come about?
Yeah, so originally what I just wanted to do is I wanted to start a business where I could house my NFP resources. And then I had thought, now that I'm kind of out of full-time ministry, what I would really love to do is I would love to just do speaking workshops for families and things like that. Like just put myself out there as an occasional speaker. And so I just set up this LLC, and I didn't realize that I was creating Pearl and Thistle for what it ended up being, really, which was this kind of lifelong body literacy model. It was really just supposed to be like, this is Christina Valenzuela, and she does these, various things, and you can hire her to do stuff. So yeah, I created Pearl and Thistle, and then the first thing that next fell into place was actually something that I still have. It's a little bit hidden, but I created a workbook called Building NFP Support in Your Parishes. And it was designed to give to my priest friends or my other friends who were working in parishes that really didn't quite understand the sort of pastoral or financial support that couples needed in order to access NFP materials. And so I put together this kind of snapshot, this little workbook that a parish staff could pick up and they could do, and they could make an immediate plan to just bolster NFP support in their parishes. That was the first step. So that's kind of at the tail end of my sort of spectrum of support materials, right? The parish support is kind of at the end. And then at the same time, I was building out the opposite end, which is the beginning education, which is starting to introduce girls to this concept of the language of their bodies, and just letting them know about how their bodies work even before they have their first period, so that they're not caught off guard, so that they can decrease anxiety about periods and be better prepared. So those two kind of bookends actually started me thinking, because then I was like, okay, well, how do I get from point A to point B? What is there in between? And I think I kept discovering that there were a lot more steps in between than I originally thought there might have been.
Right. The subgroups, right? There's actually quite a few of them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Here we are. So that's kind of how it started expanding from there.
Okay.
Can you tell our listeners how you came up with the name? I know the information is on the website, and I was just in awe of your story. So please share how you came up with that.
So Pearl and Thistle is actually homage to my ancestors. So as I was kind of making this transition away from full-time ministry, doing my own thing, my family discovered that we were direct descendants of Saint Margaret of Scotland and Malcolm Canmore, King of Scotland. And so we had kind of known about the lineage up to a certain point, but we didn't know where it went to. And it was interesting because I had actually chosen Margaret as part of my religious name in the lay Dominicans. So a few years prior, I had made profession with the lay fraternities of St. Dominic and took Margaret as part of my name because I had just loved her. I loved her story. She's an amazing, amazing woman, had a wonderful marriage, wonderful family. And I really wanted her in my life. And here she was in my family tree. So I thought, okay, there's got to be something there. So Margaret, the name Margaret means the pearl. And she was actually in her lifetime known as the Pearl of Scotland. And then her husband, Malcolm, is the thistle. That's the Scottish royal national symbol. So I put the two together, and that's kind of been the backdrop of my work ever since.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Wow, I just have chills. I just can't believe how she's been working in your life, all these years. It's really beautiful.
She's a really special lady. So if any of your listeners have not looked up her story, I mean, it reads like a fairy tale. She was part of an exiled royal family. They tried to come back to England. They couldn't come back, and so they're leaving again, and she gets shipwrecked on the shores of Scotland, where Malcolm is just waiting for this woman to be the new mother to his sons because he's been widowed. And, it's just like this whole dramatic thing. And then, of course, you can also get the drama of Shakespeare's Macbeth woven in there. So it's really rich. Yeah.
Gosh, that's so cool. What an amazing story. I would never, I guess even, if you're not Catholic, you would have no clue. But even being Catholic, I would never have drawn that from the name. So that's so cool. How neat. Okay, so you started with these two kind of bookends addressing young girls pre-puberty, or I guess just kind of entering puberty, and then the parish level. Like, how can we help priests navigate this world? Because, they're not married, right? But they're serving marriages and families all the time. And so how did it kind of evolve from there? Did you focus on those two for a while, develop those programs, and then kind of move forward? And then we'll kind of go into the exact concrete what you offer on your website.
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the natural progression then was to start taking it stepwise from what I say is like the ground up, right? So when I realized that there was such a gap there, right? So I had cycle prep, which was my pre-menarche workshop. And that went over really, really well. So I actually focused on that for a while. There were a couple of years where that was the main thing that I was doing. So I had come up with the idea. This was actually 2019. I'm like thinking about this idea, and I actually had it lined up to do as an in-person workshop at a pregnancy resource center here in the Boston area. And then, of course, 2020 happened. and everything got shut down. But at the same time, I had been approached by a woman who had a mom's group out in Minnesota. And she said, hey, we're really interested in doing this as a virtual thing. So I transitioned everything from kind of visuals that I could manipulate in person with a group of girls to something that I could then do on a screen, and kind of worked that out, ran it a few times, and then recorded it as a video course. And then in 2021, Cycle Prep actually got picked up by the OSV Innovation Challenge. And so I was a part of that sort of accelerator program and that competition. It's basically an innovation Catholic business challenge. I think they like to market it sometimes as like Catholic Shark Tank. It wasn't quite that intense. But we made it to the final round of that competition with Cycle Prep. And so that was really my focus for a while. But once I had that sort of solidified in my wheelhouse, and I said, no, this is really at a place where I'm, I want to expand it and I want to go bigger with this. Then the next step was, okay, well, immediately after Cycle Prep, right? What do the families then need? And that was then sort of how all of those interim steps got built, is kind of marching forward in time. Okay, now after this, what do you need? And sort of thinking that through.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the thoroughness of everything that you offer. So, of course, we're going to list all of these resources on the show notes so everyone can see it. But really, I mean, if you click on there, things are it's incredibly affordable. That's like an understatement. And then it's broken up by age group, by topic. I loved, where is it? Hang on a second. This was one that I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a cool combo, where you mix puberty and menopause. Yes, puberty and menopause, the mother-daughter prep package. I was like, what a great way to do it together, because they are kind of the bookends of our transition. They're both of our transition phases, right? Transitioning into fertility and transitioning out of fertility. So yeah, I just love it. I just love it. You did such a great job, Christina. It's so impressive. And then I think the parish level stuff is really impressive as well. The diocesan support, the parish level support. Because I do think that can be hard to navigate, where it's like, gosh, what do I even do? Where do I even start? What do my people even need?
Yeah. And I think I definitely, having worked in the church for a long time before I started this, really gave me a lot of insight into how overworked and underpaid pretty much everybody is who works in the church. And even if they were somebody who felt like they knew enough to navigate the landscape of NFP and to be that sort of central resource person, I'm thinking mostly about like diocesan folks, right? Running an NFP office. In most dioceses, they're not just doing that. In most dioceses, they're wearing 10 other hats, right? They're split between a lot of things. And so, they need things that they can pick up, and they need things that can help them disseminate information quickly and effectively and get more boots on the ground trained to help them offer this support, So I think also just understanding really what the human limitations are for a lot of our people who work in the church was a real motivating factor in some of the development of that.
And I know one of the things I hear often, and just to be clear for those that are listening, this is not a Catholic only resource. Anyone can access her website and get this material. The content obviously is going to be underlined.
The Cycle Prep program, and then the Cycle Charting for Girls courses, these courses for the younger girls, they're actually not explicitly religious. That's the explicit religious component, the sort of like reflection on what this means for me as a daughter of God and my identity and my relationships and things like that. That's a more mature level of reflection that I don't really ask an 11-year-old to do in my programs. And so all of my programs for the younger set, for the families with the Cycle Prep and the Cycle Charting, they're very much rooted in, Catholic teaching, in the sense that you're going to hear a lot about like the dignity of your body and that the good way that your body was made. But we don't explicitly say, now let's link this up to a psalm, or let's link this to the suffering of Christ on the cross, right? We're keeping it very concrete and kind of a little bit more laser focused for those younger minds, so that they have that foundation to then explore those more complicated topics as they grow.
So within the Catholic context, I think oftentimes, I know I've encountered experiences with mothers primarily, because those are who I'm engaging with when I'm often talking about their daughters, who may be hesitant to exposing their daughters to this information because of that very issue. Like, well, is the content really going to be appropriate? What are the topics that are going to be discussed? And then some women, regardless of what the answer is, they just seem very uncomfortable with presenting this information to their daughter about their bodies. And Emily and I have talked about this before quite a few times, but this spectrum of belief about how much we should know about our bodies, because what that could lead to as far as, how much control and awareness of our fertility should we have before we kind of teeter on that line of, pushing God aside and us, kind of being the sole planners of our family and deciding, when we want to have children, how many children we want to have, kind of like pushing more towards that idea or the notion of like Catholic contraception, but just using like natural family planning. So how have you, I imagine you have, encountered pushback from mothers, from women who are, hesitant to share this information with the coming generation?
Yeah, I think that initial knee-jerk reaction is really, I'm just going to say it's well-founded in a lot of cases because of the way that we've set the expectations for how this information is presented in general. Like when you're talking to parents and you say, I'm going to teach your daughter about menstrual cycles, immediately in a parent's mind, they say, okay, well, menstrual cycles are connected to ovulation, which is connected to reproduction, which is connected to sex, which is connected to all of these other things. And in our adult minds, we're saying all these things are connected, so we have to talk about them all at once. And I am not ready for my 9-year-old to talk about that. And I think that that's a good inclination to have, right? What I want to do is I want to take that mom and I want to just hold her hand and I want to say, you know what? I hear you. And that's why we did our model differently. Right? Because we do not have to be talking about sex when we introduce girls who are 8 or 9 and going through puberty and need to know what's happening with their bodies to these immediate changes. And we actually do have, if we're talking specifically to a Catholic audience, we actually do have guidance from the church on this. There's a wonderful document, 1995, Truth and Meaning of Human Sexuality by the Pontifical Council for the Family, which talks about this sort of stepwise education that we can do for puberty and chastity education in the home. And it talks about the necessity of teaching our kids about their bodies first, dealing with the immediate needs that they're going through. And then you gradually expand those conversations to these bigger topics under your own parental guidance. So that's what my programs have hopefully built the space for, is that we are going to lay the biological foundations for you to have really good conversations with your kids about how we now understand our biology in light of our faith as they grow, right? And so, I just want to, for some of those moms, right, the reaction really is just built into this misconception about what the model needs to have. And I think we can just do it differently. For those who are kind of on the further end of the spectrum, again, I would say you have to make the best decision for your family. Maybe these programs are not for you, but boy, there's a whole lot of Catholics standing in line for a millennium at this point, which are telling us that the pedagogy of creation, like learning to know God through studying the way he has made creation, including us, is a really, really great pathway. It's a really great pathway to holiness. And so beginning with learning about our bodies is ultimately, for a more mature mind, a pathway to contemplation about God. That is what our Catholic faith teaches us. And so, if we're going to toe the line really hard on some of those things, I think maybe we should be thinking about what those implications might be long term.
Yeah, I love that focus of kind of turning the argument almost on its head to say, but if we know God more, we can love God more, and we can know God more by knowing how he made us, how he made creation. Studying that is, yeah, it just blows your mind, especially as you get to know your body more and how human life comes into existence and how unlikely it is that human life would come into existence because of this one sperm and this one egg at this one exact moment in time having to be there precisely correct, like how everything has to work together. You just become even more in awe of the creator. So yeah, I just love the positive approach to it, that we don't have to be scared of what God's given us. We don't have to be scared of science. We don't have to be scared of those things that God wants to reveal himself in our learning, and we can get to know him more. So yeah, that's just so beautiful. Okay, Emily, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'm
Go for
wondering,
it.
can you tell us, okay, so I know there's different age levels, and they expand as you get deeper. Can you tell us what a course would look like for a, pubescent girl that, or, prepubescent even, just generally speaking, how many videos, and is it mother-daughter, and, all the things?
Oh, that's a great question, Emily. Yeah, so the cycle prep course is kind of the core of what we would think about as like the pre-menarche or the prepubescent course. And that can be accessed a few different ways. On my website, you'll mostly see me promoting the kind of like pre-recorded video courses. There are some live workshops and things, but I'm very limited with availability on that. But yeah, so cycle prep is designed to be parent-daughter. And I'm actually very careful to say parent-daughter because, there are dads who are the ones who are navigating this with their daughters. And, I think we unintentionally alienate them in some of the ways that we do our marketing. So like, yeah, I mean, 99.8% of who I'm working with are mother-daughter pairs. But there's always that dad in there who's like, hey, what about me? So parent-daughter is actually how I market my materials there. And in my video courses and my workshops, I'm very careful to say parents and not exclusively moms. But yeah, so the videos are broken up into like 7-8 minute segments. There's 75 minutes total, but it allows you to kind of pause as you go through different segments of the videos to take your time. So parents could do it all in one sitting with their girls, kind of like click through the videos. Or you could break it up and you could do it over the span of a few days or even longer. There are companion resources in the portal for you. So there's a family workbook with additional activities about like different types of period products, or like, where am I in my puberty timeline, or talking through changes that you went through. It's a great opportunity to start sharing stories with your kids in a kind of natural way. So everything is kind of housed in this video course, and there's lots of PDF downloads and additional resources to access there. So that's kind of the main delivery method for a lot of the materials that I have is this online video course format. Some of the other things are delivered actually as books, but primary stuff would be short segment videos with pausing in between, and then accompanying PDF handouts and worksheets and things like that.
That's amazing. I know Amy and I have talked about this so many times, and as teachers of NFP method, so often, oh my goodness, I am asked all the time, Emily, what do you recommend? Because these clients, these women and couples that we're working with, there's a trust there between the teacher and the couple. And so I have always wanted something that I could direct them towards. And to be honest, I've heard of your company and your programs. I just didn't know anyone that had used them. And a lot of my women and couples have heard of you, but it's the same thing. And you brought up earlier about there is such a trust and a word of mouth component to this. And so when someone can know, like, yes, I did this and it was so wonderful, that's worth its weight in gold. And so I'm just so excited to be able to say that we've talked to you and we know how these programs work and how they've been designed, and they sound like they are going to be such a great fit for so many parents and daughters. So
Yeah, thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this cycle charting for girls, the value-based approach to observing and understanding pre and teen menstrual cycles? So this is a book that you wrote, like a hard book or a PDF book?
It's a hard copy book. Yep.
Okay.
So my
So
two,
what would be, sorry, just a follow-up question. So
yeah.
what is the book? And then what would be the context that we would use this book? Is this like a health class book? Is this just like a personal read?
Yeah, it's designed to be a personal read. So the idea is that after cycle prep, so I'm trying to, it's hard when you're a business owner, they're like, create your avatar and create like a customer journey for everybody. And I'm like, but I want to serve all of these people. So the primary audience for that, I imagine, is maybe a mom and daughter have done cycle prep before a girl gets her first period, and maybe next year, the following year, she gets her first period. And now she's like, well, I learned about cervical fluid in cycle prep, and I know that it can tell me some patterns. So how could I learn to observe those patterns instead of going to the internet and grabbing whatever Clue or Flow or whatever all these other companies have to offer, which that's aside, like watch out for your apps. Okay. I wanted to create a charting book that mom and daughter could sit and look at together. It's not on individual personal devices. It's something that you can open and you can look at together. You can see the content together. You can go through, you can talk through. And it just teaches her in kind of 2 stages. So cycle charting for girls in the first part introduces basic charting just for observation. It explains why cycles are more irregular in the first few years. It talks about the development, like what is the HPO axis and what's going on there. And so what are the sorts of variations that we might expect to see? And let's just learn how to kind of, become detectives and learn about our patterns and not put any sort of anticipatory pressure on it. This is one thing that I absolutely abhor about even teen tracking apps is that they're predictive. And it drives me crazy because this causes more anxiety for girls because their cycles, it's okay for them to be irregular for the first few years, right? You guys know this. I see all the heads nodding. For all of the people listening to the podcast, the heads are nodding here. And then once her cycles have gotten more regular, then you can say, okay, well, did you know that ovulation is actually a really healthy sign? And so here are all of the things that we can learn about our cycles and our overall health. And here are the things that we can look out for just by tracking for ovulation. So it doesn't include any calculations for fertility. It doesn't even include discussions on fertility in that book. It is really just about let's learn about our bodies and how this is a healthy sign and how we can learn to respect the natural rhythms of our bodies. That's all that book is for those girls.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
I'll link to it in the show notes. You can get on Amazon. Yeah. So yes, of course, nodding my head because that's also something when I remember learning about the volatility, quote unquote. That's like a very intense term, but I don't mean it to be so intense of the early like cycling years is normal because your body, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, people have heard it, but your body has a system that is turning on. And as it's turning on, it's trying to get into this rhythm, right? And then while it's trying to get into this rhythm, if it's met with opposition from different lifestyle factors, genetic abnormalities, et cetera, insert the thing, well, then it could set the system off, right? And so we could get wonky signs. We could have wonky periods. Timings could be off. So I think it's just at a time nowadays when the standard medical protocol is if you don't look like this, here's a pill so that your body can look like this. Mm-hmm. We need to just be screaming even louder from the rooftops and informing parents who are taking their children to the doctors to know what's actually normal and what's actually abnormal, what you need to respond to and get treatment, and what you don't need to respond to, what you need to just kind of let play out that will oftentimes correct itself, or that you could help support in the transition through different lifestyle change, supplement support, sleeping well, nourishing well, moving well, all the things. So yeah, good. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And focusing ovulation. This is where I kind of go back to that conversation we just had about concerned mothers, concerned parents, concerned individuals about, are we going to teach girls information too young? Ovulation is a powerhouse in a woman's body. It is a sign that so much is going right, and it takes so much to make that go right. So if it's not, we have been given these biomarkers to tell us internally, hey, something's off. It's not working well here. Well, let's get back to ovulating because that is just going to set us up for bone health, for brain health, for heart health, for the entirety of our life. If we want to be healthy, we need to be ovulating. And it's just so important. So yeah, thank you. Again, amazing, great resources. I had one other, go ahead, Emily.
Go ahead. Amy.
Okay, one other question, sorry, about boys. So I'm sure you talked about how you started at these two ends of the spectrum with parishes, with young girls. And now, I'm a mother of all boys. And my mind is thinking, what's been on my heart is, gosh, how can we be reaching and teaching the boys too, because although girls are kind of like the primary actors in like this world of cycling and puberty because they have cycles, men don't have cycles, boys still go through transitions during puberty. And at what stage can we start to have those conversations about here's complementarity, in the garden, Adam saw Eve. He made sense because he saw her and she made sense because of him. Like our fertility, why do I make eggs? I have no clue until I see man. Oh, he has sperm. Why does he make sperm? It doesn't make sense by himself. There is that complementarity together. And so at what point can we have this discussion? And then do you also see maybe a need for helping our young men during that transition from boyhood into manhood?
I mean, do I see the need? Yes. And I get asked about it all the time. And my answer is we need men to step up and do it, because it's one thing to have like the Catholic period lady be like, okay, now let's talk to boys about periods. But like to really speak to them about their own bodies, right? And to have that coming from a place of authority and just reverence and, it really, where are the guys doing this? Okay, guys, if you're listening, or right, or if ladies, if you have a husband who's really gung ho about this, let's chat. But yeah, I've thought about boys a lot, and the short answer I have is that Pearl Thistle is thinking about some things. So I'm working on a puberty book that would be for both boys and girls that includes that complementarity. But I don't have any extensive plans to be speaking directly to the boys, partly because when we think back to that document about the truth and meaning of human sexuality and how the church offers guidance, I think a lot of parents intuit this as well. It really is, okay, you need to be able to speak to what does your child need to know right now, right? And so some boys, because they're living with older sisters, need to know more and need to know certain things about periods that maybe their peers don't practically need to know. And so it could be fine to hold off on those conversations based on when a boy is going to get exposed to something like a tampon in his bathroom. Okay? The where I think we can think a little bit harder is I do have a teen program that's for boys and girls. And what that one is actually a video series that is about just basic human sexual reproduction, right? It doesn't go into many details, but it talks about here's how the gametes get together. And then it pairs that with the concept of body literacy. So here's how our reproductive systems are built. A woman has this infradian rhythm that goes on the monthly cycle, and the man's testosterone cycle looks like this. And we can both learn to be literate and to honor the natural rhythms of our cycles. So it introduces that idea. It introduces the testosterone cycle for boys, and then puts that all in conversation with explicit Catholic moral teaching on marriage, sex, and family planning. So that's the one area, and that's for later teens. But that's the one area where I'm like, okay, let's wrap all these topics up together, because at the age of 15 or 16, we really need to know the basics of this stuff, right?
And what course is that you're talking about?
That is called, you're going to put me on the spot, Anatomy,
Okay.
Reproduction, and Fertility for Catholic Teens.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh,
Yep.
cool. Okay. Yeah, we'll link that one specifically too.
These courses, sometimes I'm like, what did I call that one? Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
right. Well, you have a bunch, Christina. I wouldn't blame you if you
Yeah.
didn't remember half of them. I mean, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
so that one was developed because there was a Catholic high school teacher. She was the health teacher, and she had been stuck teaching this like NFP module in her health classes and had to cobble stuff together because she couldn't find something that handled both the biology and the Catholic moral teaching in the way that she thought made sense. So I was like, okay, yeah. And then lots of parents have used it too, like especially if you're homeschooling and
Yeah.
if you need a module on this, right, you're going to get your biology and you're going to get your Catholic moral teaching all in one, or if you just feel like you're at a school that hasn't covered this, or it's covered one aspect of it and you want to show the mirror side of it, right? A lot of parents have used it for that. So that's the course. So, I think at that point, absolutely. But should there be some just basic awareness even before then? Yeah, I think so. There is one interesting book. I'm kind of going off on tangents here. I did not write this book, and the author has redesigned all the books at this point, but there's a woman, her name is Shelley Metton, and she is actually an anatomy professor out in California. And she has a whole series called Anatomy for Kids. And she has companion books that are like it's like, I'm a girl. Here's how boys are different. And then there's I'm a boy. Here's how girls are different. I'm getting the titles wrong. I can send you the
No,
actual
I totally, I'm
text
seeing
there.
it online. Yeah, I'm a
You
girl,
found
my
it.
changing body. Yeah, I see it on Facebook.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they're this very stepwise and very segmented. I liked her hard copies. I cannot speak for the new redesigned electronic ones. I have a sense that she may have shifted some of the content, so I haven't had a chance to preview that. But the hard copy editions, I actually really liked, and thought they were very respectful in tone and very accurate. So that one little narrow segment I can very highly recommend as a sort of gentle resource for both boys and girls of that age.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I'll link to that in the show notes. Parents can check them out for themselves before they decide, what they want to
Mm-hmm.
do with it. But yeah, that's really awesome. And the program looks great on the website. I'll have a direct link to it. So it's about 45 minutes in total. It looks like it's six broken up into like different six little segments.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of that, maybe some homeschool families getting together or just Catholic families getting together, even if it was outside of the parish to, if there's like-minded families, parents who want to expose their children, they can do this and facilitate a little discussion or,
Mm-hmm.
what have you. So awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, go ahead, Emily. Anything before we wrap up?
I was just thinking more about the moms and the daughters or the parents and the daughters. And, so often the parents are so concerned for their daughters, especially based
Yeah.
on maybe the journey that they've been on
Mm-hmm.
and the struggles that they've had. And, we don't want anyone to have to go through what we've been through. And I'm thinking about a specific mom who I've been texting with, and I'm just wondering what you might say to the mom of a daughter or the parent of a daughter who's really concerned that something is wrong and they don't have the in-person resources, and they just need some help. And so I'm wondering where would be the perfect place to start on your website for a menstruating girl,
Oh
at that
gosh.
point.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, I'll just be upfront. Like, what you won't find on my website is like, here's how to fix XYZ issues, right? I mean, I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nurse, right? I can't diagnose and tell you particular courses, right? What I do offer in my courses and my resources is just general guidelines of things that we often forget about when it comes to self-care. So talking about in my cycle prep course, for example, when I talk about menstrual cramps, first of all, I set the expectation that severe cramping is not acceptable as a norm. Okay. A lot of us were not told that growing up, and we've kind of internalized this. And we say, oh, well, having cramps and having bad periods is just part of being a woman. Okay, here's where we can rewrite those scripts. Here's where we can make some progress. And then kind of suggestions and remember, period cramps, they're not like special cramps. Like all of the things that we do to help with normal other cramps, you can also apply to this, right? So gentle suggestions for that sort of thing, and then when to reach out for help. So if a mom is feeling like, I feel like something is off. Okay, number one, mom intuition is really powerful. And if that's coming from a place of genuine concern and not fear and anxiety, we have to sift that out a little bit, right? I think the best thing is to get some data under your belt, because I cannot tell you, I'm sure you've had this sometimes too, where clients will be like, my cycles are so irregular and I don't know what's going on. And it's just because they haven't actually been tracking and things aren't actually all that irregular. And once you actually get that data down on paper and you see, you're like, oh, yeah, actually, those patterns really do make sense, So sometimes it's just the way that we're construing perceived data in our minds. So I would say learn about the cycle, learn about what's normal in terms of variations, which cycle prep does really well. Here are normal variations for the first few years, and here's when you talk to the doctor, right? Laying that very clear boundary line. And then get some data. If she's already cycling, invite her to start charting. See what those variations actually look like, right? And sometimes you will discover, oh, it actually really wasn't that bad. And sometimes you'll say, okay, now we have a whole arsenal of information that we can actually take to the doctor, and we can put it in terms that the doctor understands, right? Instead of saying my periods are irregular, say, I'm alternating between 18 to 53 days between cycles. That's something that your physician is going to say, oh, okay, that's meaningful, right? So, get that data, and that would be my recommendation. The other thing, if I can, while we have time, I want to plug my book. I wrote a book with our Sunday Visitor that came out in 2024 called The Language of Your Body: Embracing God's Design for Your Cycle. And as a resource for moms, I am really, really excited because it's a book that's all about kind of offering some sort of healing reflections on things that we may have absorbed, negative things we may have absorbed about our bodies, either through our own experiences or because people have kind of shouldered us with those sorts of things. And then breaking that open and saying, okay, how can our faith shed light on this? How can our faith actually deepen our understanding of what it means to be a woman in light of this biology, right? So also that is a resource that I have been told by many women has been healing for them and has helped them gain a more positive vocabulary for even beginning to talk to their kids, even their adult daughters who have struggled with things. So I want to also just kind of put that in there while we still have time.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for writing that. That's so needed. So needed.
Yeah, I think that's something that I know we've talked about before is, you know, one of the reasons why I love mother-daughter, parent-child courses is because, and that was my thought when Emily and I were teaching a class, when I taught a class at a parish, was talking to the pastor to say, look, when we have this model, one, I know I'm not the primary educator. I'm not going to be with this child for very long. And so I need the parent who is the primary educator to feel knowledgeable, to answer questions, to field, ideas and thoughts and to have these conversations, and recognizing that there's like a wounded parent community of, their own pasts and experiences, their own formation, holes within their formation, and just sensitivities to this topic. And I think when you invite them in under the auspice of like, let's help your daughters, you can really help address some dearths in knowledge, as well as maybe get at like the opportunity for that Holy Spirit to get in there for healing of whatever, might need some healing. So gosh, that's great, Christina. And another, just kudos to you for recognizing an area or a demographic that needs some help and support. And it's definitely, I would say, that the parent who needs to be encouraged and empowered to, find healing, find wholeness so that they can then parent to the best of their ability. So that's great. I'll link to that book as well in the show notes. One other kind of demographic we haven't talked about yet is the NFP teacher out there who wants to share all this great information, and they're happy to send them to your website to do the online videos. But even in this modern day and age, people do still enjoy an in-person class from time to time. So can an NFP teacher learn how to teach your content? And if so, how do they go about doing that?
Yeah, that's great. So there are currently two programs that I do offer kind of leader packages for. The first one, for that cycle charting for girls, that handbook, I do have a leader presentation kit, right? So it's not a full training program. It basically assumes that you have a working knowledge of menstrual cycles, and all you need in order to approach this demographic is a really nicely designed program to get it in their hands, right? So if you are somebody who is like a self-starter and is like, I have this background information, I want to have something ready-made to deliver this to teens, that's for you. So the Cycle Charting for Girls Leader Kit I have available on my website. So if you go to pearlandthistle.com, you can look. I have things divided by audience, okay? And so I forget if it's labeled as teachers or whatever it is, presenters, something. That would be there for you. And then the other one is I do train people. This is more intensive, but I train people to deliver the cycle prep workshop. That is a very specially sort of curated slide deck and a very specific sort of script, and very specific set of materials. But if you were interested in becoming a certified or a licensed cycle prep workshop provider, I do run those trainings usually a couple times a year. It's much more hands-on. You do kind of pre-recorded video courses mixed with some live Zoom training sessions with me. And then once you're done, you could deliver that cycle prep workshop. And in both of those cases, You can add these things to your repertoire. You can charge for your programs, right? And so you can add this to any sort of business that you are offering in this NFP body literacy education space.
Fantastic. So how will people stay abreast of when you offer those courses? What can they do to be in touch with you?
Yeah, so just subscribe to my newsletter. So I have two kind of standard newsletters. One just goes out once a month. That's just the Pearl and Thistle Insider. It's the general one. And then I have a weekly newsletter, the Body Lit Library, which goes out on Thursdays. And so both of those newsletters will be promoting those trainings when they come around.
Excellent. So no matter who you are, if you are a living, breathing human being, you can find something that's helpful on her website. I mean, if you're breastfeeding, postpartum, pre-Cana, single woman, young girl, dad, mom, whoever it is, priest, pastor, bishop of a diocese. I mean, there is just so much on here that you could draw from that is very accessible. I just can't wait for people to know more about it. I'm just going to be screaming it from the rooftops here, Christy.
I am too. I'm happy to promote this. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, ladies, so much.
Yeah, congratulations on all the amazing work you've done. Thank you for all the work you've done. Please keep it up. We'll be praying for you. And yeah, if you've got other stuff going on, we'd love to have you back on to talk about it.
Yes, please.
Thank you. It's been such a joy chatting with you. I feel like we're really lockstep on so many of these issues. And I love that, podcasts and, as much of a downer as it can be sometimes, social media, but these things really can unite us in a way that, our community has not been able to unite before. And I really see so many positive things coming from all of us in these different spheres working together and promoting each other. So I just want to thank you for that important work, for getting all of this out there, because it's time. It's time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And just for those who haven't listened already, before on the podcast, we did interview Michaela, which is how we got connected with you, Christina. So everyone go back and listen. It was very briefly touched on, but that Christina is trained in the Boston Crosscheck method, which is a method of natural family planning. So if you want more information specifically on that method, go back and listen to our interview with Michaela. So, all right, Christina, thanks so much for your time. And for all the listeners, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.
That wraps up another episode of the NFP Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found our discussion enlightening and empowering. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please connect with us by sending us an email with your questions and stories to thenfpshow@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with more insights, tips, and heartfelt conversations about natural family planning. Until then, love responsibly.